This
Shankar,
conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, Shiva, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Very good evening to everyone. This is very kind of a lot of people to have joined this evening's webinar series by ASCE. As right now I can see 74. Thank you all for joining. These are difficult days for every one of us, and as professionals, we think the best opportunity to skill ourselves a little more over this period. As an introduction, AACE, just a few words about AACE. AACE International, as you may be aware, is a non-profit professional association with members in about 87 countries and 80 local sections. It started in 1956, and AACE International serves the total cost management professionals in disciplines as cost engineering, estimation, planning, scheduling, decision and risk management, project control, cost and schedule control, earned value management, claims areas. I am myself a EPC professional from the oil and gas industry, and it is our endeavor to get our senior experienced professionals to share their knowledge. We are now starting a series of webinars starting today for the next 14 days. So I welcome all of you to take part and get the value from these sessions. Today, it's about the introduction to the EPC project. It's more an introduction to the younger professionals who may not be fully familiar. The detailed technical sessions will start from tomorrow. Today is more an introduction about the EPC project so that you get oriented towards what's going to come and how this is related. So we'll be able to make more sense of the technical sessions. So we have Girish presenting the session today. So thank you, Girish, for the session today. And I once again thank all the participants who have joined today, and I welcome each and every one of you on behalf of AACE International. Thanks, Shankar, for taking the initiative, and to all the organizers. And I now invite Girish to take over and take the session. Girish, can you please take over?
Yeah. Good evening to everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Shankar, and thank you, Shiva sir, for the introduction for the seminar. And definitely, this is a good initiative taken by AACE India to reach out to the young professionals. So there, when we say young professionals, they are basically maybe from the young graduates, or maybe some few of them are doing MBAs, or maybe some professionals already in the construction industry who has about 2-3 years of experience. So we'll quickly start with the session. Now, considering the number of participants, we cannot have the session as an interactive session. Generally, I do that kind of thing. That is how we can connect to each other very well. But this is not possible in today's session. So what I will do is I will quickly go through my thoughts for about say 45 to 50 minutes, and then we'll keep about 10 to 15 minutes for the question and answer if there are any specific questions. Or maybe after the session, we can also have we'll also make some arrangement by which you can send your questions to me, and then I can answer each one of them. So let us begin. So today's presentation is basically for all those who are not familiar with the EPC projects, particularly in the oil and gas and petrochemical industry. So we'll start with that. Okay, so this is about me. Quickly, I will explain. So I have spent almost 30 years in this construction industry, particularly oil and gas, power and industrial projects. And I have worked right, from the subcontractors to the up to the operating companies. So the last project which I completed was with ADNOC in Abu Dhabi, and it was about $1.5 billion project, which I was leading as a PMC team leader. And after completion of that project in 2018, I decided to take a semi-retirement kind of thing, and I wanted to devote my time to facilitate and conduct trainings and such seminars. So I am a certified cost professional since 2004, and I am also a PMB from the PMI in 2010, and I'm also associated with the AC India section, as you can see. So the first question which comes to the mind of any young graduate, here we are talking about engineering graduates, that whenever they reach to say third year or final year of the engineering, they start thinking about what to do next. So the options which they have is, first is the placement. Some of them want to get some experience before going to say master's degree or doing something else. Now, when we talk about placement, they have options available, as they could be, the design or design engineer. They can join some production or manufacturing companies, or they can go to some, to construction industries. Now, what happens that generally what I have seen in my last 30 years of experience, this is the area, the construction industry, which is given the last preference, by most of the people. And that is something which I thought I should be concentrating upon or focusing upon when I give such kind of conduct such kind of seminars or facilitate training courses. So apart from this placement, of course, some people choose to go and take some higher educations like MS, MTech or MBAs. And now I see that in many colleges they have MBAs in construction and project management. So that is a good thing. And if you have some some people, if they have some background of family background, they can start their own business or get into the existing business. Now, what I see is, if we talk about placement, the general trend which I found, of course, this is from the internet search which I did, that there are about 115 lakh students who pass out every year, the engineers I'm talking about, and only maybe 40 to 50% of them can get a job through campus placements, and the rest of them are left to find on their own if they are really looking for the placements. Now, what I see here, all that list, 60%, almost 80% of them are not acceptable to. I mean, this is very unfortunate to say, but due to lack of some skills, they don't find the jobs very easily, or even if they find, they are not offered, good packages. And if you see here, the thing is that the placement ratio for all these people, is hardly 40 to 50%. So that's something which we really need to understand, and this is where I think that acquiring some skills will definitely make the things better for all of them. So let us talk about the construction industry. Now, what happens whenever we talk about construction projects, generally what I see is, people talk about only civil projects. Whenever I say construction, they think that it's a building project, or maybe some infrastructure project like road, highways, bridges, and metro rail, because that is what they see when they are staying in the city. But the thing is, there are a lot of other projects, like we have industrial projects like steel, pharmaceutical, chemical, fertilizer. There are oil and gas projects, refinery, petrochemical, onshore development, and these projects have the value wise they are very large, and they accommodate so many resources. So that is where you have better prospects available. When you have more resources, naturally the opportunities are bigger. And also the power projects, so like coal fired, gas combined cycle, hydel, wind and solar, those are the non-conventional. Now, when we talked about the different type of projects, now let us see what is project. So people say that yeah, it is a project, but what it means, what exactly is the project? Now I have a list of a few projects, or maybe they are not projects. Generally, I go one by one, and seek opinion from the attendees that which one they feel that is a project or it is not a project. So now, since we have a limitation, from this list, there is only one item which we say that it is not a project, and that is the working as receptionist, because that is an operation. It is a daily activity. There is nothing new in that. But rest of all the items, those are called projects. Even the second item, when we say that doing engineering degree or post graduation, the reason is hello, yeah. The reason is that there are few characteristics attached to each of them. That is why we call them as a project. And what are those characteristics? So the characteristics are like the nature is temporary. They have a definite start and definite end date attached to that, and it is a unique thing. So that is why we call them as a project. Now I have two definitions here. The first one, that is, project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create unique product, service, or result. When I say unique product, service, or result, means product means it could be a manufacturing. Some manufacturing company is producing a new product. It is a service. Service is like, we are building projects, or maybe we are offering some service to client, like if it is a specialist contractor, something like that. So this is a PMI definition, which is actually widely known to people. But at the same time, ACI has got a wider view of that definition, because it also talks about meeting specific objective in a prescribed time, monetary limitations. But the thing is, when we meet tomorrow, I will talk more about will talk about more on the TCM. So then we will come to know that how this definition differs a little bit than the PMI definition. So this is what is project actually. Now let us talk something, in short about the project management. When we say project management, what exactly is project management? A project goes through different processes, different stages in the total life cycle of the project. So initially, the project initiated, that is where the conceptual study is done, basic things are organized, and the decision is taken whether to move forward for that project or not. In planning process, we do all the other planning things, like we prepare a schedule, we prepare cost estimates, then we write down a lot of procedures, how we are going to organize our process. We plan our resources, then we set up procedures to manage them. So all that is done in planning. In executing, we actually execute whatever we have planned. It's very simple. So basically, constructing the project, then acquiring resources. When I say resources, it is human resources as well as machinery. So all these things are done in executing process. The next is the monitoring and controlling process. This is very important, because this is where you want to check that whatever you planned, whether that is happening the way you wanted it to happen. So when you are executing whatever is planned, but in monitoring and controlling, you are checking it. So basically, you are checking plan versus actual, and then you are deciding whether you need to take any preventive or corrective action to do that. Corrective, when I say corrective action, means the event has passed and now you need to take an action to see that you come back to your original course of the project. And when I say preventing, means that yes, something has happened, but you still have time to recover and you need to take an action so that nothing goes wrong in the future. And the last process is closing process. Closing is also important. When I say closing, means that is the time when the deliverables which are produced are validated, and are handed over to the customer. The customer signs it off. You close the contract. You release the resources. All these things happen in the closing process. So this is how the project goes through different phases, and so we have a separate. So this is also reference to the PMBOK of PMI. Now, how that is handled? The very first thing which we need to understand is the very important thing which needs to be achieved in order to have a successful project. It's scope, time, and cost. We have to complete the scope the way whatever we wanted to finish to achieve that service or product. Then there is a prescribed timeline, which is the schedule baseline. That is that is a timeline where we wanted to finish the project, and then there is a budget, which is cost. We want to complete it in that particular cost. But all this is being done with reference to the quality, because whatever product you are manufacturing or whatever service you are providing, it has to meet the performance criteria which has been set in the beginning. So all these three triple constraints has to be achieved, along with the customer satisfaction. Now, what happens that apart from that, all these four objectives cannot be achieved unless you focus on all other all other things, like whatever I have mentioned here is the resources. You need to manage your resources, you need to manage your stakeholders, you need to manage the procurement, you need to manage communication, risk, integration. So all these things are also required to be managed in order to manage these four prime important things. Now all these processes, or all these whatever I mentioned about the we need to manage, it is called as knowledge areas as per PMBOK. So there are actually 10 knowledge areas in the PMBOK, and if you manage all these things, then definitely your project will be successful. Now let us see what is EPC project. By now we have hello somebody. Yeah. So until now we have understood what is construction, and now we have understood what is project. So let us see what is EPC project. When I say EPC project, as it says, it is engineering, procurement, and construction. Commissioning is also a part of it. So, but what happens is sometimes the commissioning is is kept with the owner, and the contractor only does EPC, or sometimes the construction is also part of the total work. So it is also called as EPIC, that is engineering, procurement, installation, and commissioning, or EPCC. So any name you can give it. So that is how the EPC project is. For any EPC project, to start with, the field is what is important. That is front end design and engineering, and that because that is the basis of any EPC contract, because the field is done, either it is done by the owner, or the owner appoints a different design contractor to do this field. But that forms as a basis of EPC contract, and based on that the tenders are floated, and the EPC companies bid for that project, and the project is awarded. Now, as part of the EPC contract, detail engineering is done by the EPC contractor. He validates the field, and then based on that, he does the detail engineering. He may have to do some analysis. He may have to do some additional investigation or additional things to see that the field is validated. Now what has then, so we know now what is E, that is E is engineering, which is called as detail engineering. C is construction. Now P of that part, P is procurement. Now procurement is something like, not all the resources are available with the contractor, or not all the material he can arrange on himself. So he has to look for some subcontractors, he has to look for manufacturer, he has to look for suppliers to provide that thing. So anything which is procured or which is purchased outside the project is actually called as procurement. So it could be procurement of material, direct material going into this thing, consumables. It could be procurement of additional labor. It could be a procurement of subcontractors. or maybe specialist service providers, third-party agencies. All this comes under procurement. So this is the more or less what is EPCs called about. Is this flow okay, or I'm going too fast, Sankar?
Carry on, sir. Carry on. Perfect.
Okay.
Carry on.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now let us see, when we say EPC project, we need to see what is the volume of this EPC project. So I will give an example of, say, one of my previous project, which I did, the last project. That was a $1.6 billion oil development project. It was an upstream project with ADNOC. Now, generally, for any such kind of mega refinery and petrochemical projects, the bifurcation or the distribution of the cost for all these EPIC is like, whatever percentage I have mentioned here. Now, why I want to give this, that you look at the construction part of it, which says 35 to 40%. Okay, engineering is 5 to 7. Now, procurement is 50 to 55, which is going, which is the cash out of that project, which is being, cash out in the sense that the part, the material or the equipment is being manufactured by someone's, some other supplier or manufacturer. The construction part, 35, 40% is all resource driven. So you need the resources, that is basically the labor, staff and equipment. And engineering is also 100% resource based. You only have the engineers, design engineers working for it. But what happens, generally what I have seen, that whenever a student or MBA graduate who wants to enter into construction, he thinks that the design engineering is the best thing to do. He feels that, yes, this is an office based job. He doesn't have to go to the site, and it is better to sit in the office and do the job. But the thing is, if you see the percentage, it gives you an idea that what kind of opportunities are available, if it is construction. So you have a very limited, even if you take a ratio, you have a ratio of say 1:6. So if there is a one opportunity as a design engineer, you have 6 to 7 opportunities available in the field, or maybe as a project engineer in the office. I will talk about what are those opportunities in the latter part of this presentation. Now here, just look at the size of the construction as far as the world GDP. 13% of the world's GDP is all related to construction related spending, so which is huge. And the thing is, there is a lot of scope for improvement, particularly if you see at the bottom, reskill workers. So that is where, that is what is mainly required, that if you acquire the skills, then there is no stopping you. You have so many opportunities available that you can get into these operating companies or big EPC companies, and you can have your career. Okay, now going back to the EPC contract, we talked about this engineering, procurement, construction, and commissioning. So these are the phases in that particular project. So when we say project, it could be a total project, or it could be a phase of project, which is to be managed, independently. Now in EPC projects, why I put this schedule, generally it doesn't happen that way, but of course there is a sequence that, procurement has to offer. Procurement has to happen after engineering, construction has to happen when the material is available, and commissioning has to be done when the construction is done. But it is not done like this, because if you go like that, then the time required to complete a project will be too much, and then the objective of that project cannot be achieved. So what happens, there is a concept called as fast tracking. Generally most of these mega projects are now fast tracked. So what happens, they try to overlap all these phases as much possible as they can. So they want to start the procurement as soon as they have some data available, some engineering done, and they want to do the procurement, because some of the items, like what we call them as the long lead items, they take almost 18 months to 20 months to manufacture, and then you can't wait for the complete engineering to be finished in order to in order to place the order for that equipment, and then when you will receive that equipment, and your construction will be delayed. So generally what happens, all these long lead items like compressors or turbines, or maybe the columns, the large items, the order is placed based on some whatever data is available in the field document, and then they try to do the detail engineering as fast as possible for these items and place the order. But then whenever the engineering is developed further, they will see that all that updated data, or what we call is revised documents and drawings, are passed on to the manufacturer, so that there is no any issue with the manufactured items. So generally how it is done is they try to overlap as much as possible, start the procurement at the earliest, for the major equipments, and for the bulk equipment, even if they have say 60% of engineering ready, they will go for the bulk procurement. Bulk procurement is like pipes, or maybe cables, cable trays, items like that. So that can be ordered to say 80% of the total requirement, and then can be fine-tuned when you have the complete engineering done. Now construction starts whenever these orders are placed, and also the civil work, particularly the all the civil works like clearing of site, or excavation and things like that, grading, all that can start very early. And also the underground services, because unless you do the underground services, the large equipments cannot be placed. So this is how the the interface takes place in all those 4 places in the mega projects. Now, to give you some idea of how a EPC project looks like, I have put some photographs. So you can see those 3 big columns standing there, and then this photo you see one column. Now, you can now imagine that unless you install this column, you cannot do rest of the construction. Like you see these pipe racks behind that column, but there could be some pipe racks on this side of the column. Now, unless that column is installed, you cannot do this construction of pipe racks. So that is how the planning needs to be done. So the planning of project, the scheduling is very important. This is what I want to give you overview, that these things are very important. And you can see the complexity of the projects, like particularly this photo, you can see how that piping is done. So you need to understand that which things needs to be done. You want to do the structure first, or you want to do the large piping first, or you want to put the install equipment first. So these are the things has to be coordinated properly, and or planned properly. For that, what you need experience. It is not only that you sit in the office and do all these things. No. So the initial part of the experience in the construction industry, if you have already worked in the field, that helps to a great extent to be a successful successful project manager in future. So these are some photos. Again, if you see, it's very complex. Okay. Now let us talk about the organization structure. Generally, what has happened in last 10-15 years, that one company doesn't do a mega project, because there are 2 things. One is the economies of scale, means that one company doesn't have so many resources to get that project done, and also the expertise that some company, one company has an experience, they have more experience, or maybe they have some licenses for particular things. So if you join them, then that bid becomes more competitive. So that is how the major EPC projects are being done now. On a project, generally they have a project base, or maybe a matrix organization. A matrix, that is also a strong matrix organization, and all the resources which are assigned on that project are made responsible and accountable. That is what is very important when the resource assignment is done. Now for design engineers, what happens, what we call it that as a discipline engineers, they report to the lead engineers, and these lead engineers report to engineering manager. why I have kept it like this, that there is a limited scope available for design engineers to climb in the organization for a construction project, because the engineering manager who reports to the project manager, these design engineers cannot go beyond that. If you remain like a design engineer, maybe after 20-25 years you can become a engineering manager. But I have not seen, or maybe I have seen very limited engineering managers who have become like team leaders, or maybe have climbed up, or maybe have we managed, large projects as a project manager. That doesn't happen. But if you are a project engineer, or maybe you have worked in the field, there are good chances that you can go up to the project manager or even the project director. Okay. Now, what is the global scenario for EPC projects? Now, let us not talk about the current position. Current position is very bad, but definitely we will come out of this, because in my whatever 30 years I have spent, this is the fourth time this construction industry is going in that phase. So nothing stops. Maybe after 6 months or even a year, things will change. But one thing which I want to stress upon is the construction industry is all about resources. It is either human resources or machinery, and there is always a shortage of skilled manpower, and particularly core engineers. What has happened after 2000, many engineers, they have chosen to go for information technology or computer science, and all those areas, and very few have actually pursued the core engineering. So this is a very big shortage which I see, and I have faced that whenever we call for interviews, very, even if you interview 10 people, it is hard to find one person, suitable for that job. That is one thing. Secondly, that you must have heard, in many speeches of our Prime Minister, that the percentage of young people is very high in India. Because if you see in Europe and in Asian countries like Japan and all, there is a very big population of the old aging people. So they don't have people now available to take care of the future projects. So the Indian engineers, core engineers, have great opportunity actually to back such thing. That is one thing. And secondly, whatever I have worked almost 20 years in the Middle East, and also in Korea. I have seen that generally our people are very sincere in their work and are very much liked, by the community. Okay. So now let us see what are the opportunities available as a project engineer. When I say project engineer, means now you are actually in the construction organogram, and there are it is not only about, so it is not like that. When you say that you are a project engineer, you are a construction engineer, means you have to always wear a hat, and a helmet, and stand in the sun. It is not like that. There are a lot of other areas which are available, and if you have that kind of expertise, if you have that kind of skill, and if you acquire some kind of certifications, you can take those positions in EPC companies as well as in the operating companies. So let us see what is that is required to be a successful project engineer. So these are the fundamental abilities, that you. So basically, if you want to be a project engineer, you have to be a very flexible person. You can't say that you want to do only this or that. It doesn't happen that way. You should be flexible to basically accept the opportunities available and make whatever opportunity comes to you. You have to take that opportunity and excel. So that is how you can climb the ladder. So basically, you should have a holistic approach. There has to be leadership qualities, then of course technical expertise and domain knowledge, and problem solving skills. So these are the few things. These are actually similar to what you will find as a project manager also. But of course, project manager needs some more experience. Experience counts, and then there are some additional abilities also which are required by a project manager. But of course, the start is from project engineer. So to how you can achieve those abilities, so definitely you should have you need to do some skill development. So first thing is the soft skills. You should have some interpersonal and communication abilities. You should be able to delegate your work and also see that the work is happening. And then you should be able to do problem solving, and whatever decisions you are making should be fast, and you should be confident about those decisions. It is not that 100% of the time you will succeed, your decision will be correct, but doesn't matter. Experience, whenever you have better experience, those percentage will go down. And the other thing is project management skills. So these are the areas, like planning and scheduling. You can be a planning and scheduling engineer, you can be a cost estimator, you can be a procurement specialist, or you can be a contracts engineer. You can also be a quality engineer. So these are the areas which are also there, in a construction team. So it is not only about field engineer. If you acquire those skills, you can become maybe a planner or scheduler or a cost estimator, like that. Now, how do you achieve those skills? That is what is important. One is by working as a professional, like what I did. When I came into this industry, it was 1987. So nothing such things were available. Only after 2000, and maybe when I was in Middle East, I came to know about ASCI and then PMI. So that is when I acquired those certifications. But now those are available. So first thing is working as a professional, which is very important. I would strongly suggest that whenever you get an opportunity to work in the field in the initial time of your career, you must spend 2 to 3 years in the field, because that is something which is very important. Then only your professional training and all will come into picture. Now professional training is like I said, that some colleges are already offering this postgraduate program in the construction and project management. So that is there. Then there are a lot of industry experts who offer some courses. And then of course the professional certifications. This is very important, because what happens now the things have changed. If you have that kind of certification, you are very well accepted. So suppose for a position, the employer receives maybe 5 or 10 CVs, and if he finds that 2 of them have done PMP, or two of them have done this CCP or PSP, naturally that gives a weightage, because that proves that you have that kind of abilities and experience. Because this certification is not something that it is a written exam. You write some paper and then you get that degree. It is not that. That also requires some kind of experience. And even those questions which you attend in the exam are based on practical knowledge. So that comes into picture. So that is basically proves that you have those qualities in you, and by which it becomes very easy for employer to appoint you. Now let us go into the detail of those 4 areas. I will run with these things quickly, because we also have webinar in our latter part of webinar series. We will have specialized seminars on all these things, like we have on planning, scheduling, then we have on cost estimation, like that. So, but I'll just give you a brief idea about what it's all about. Now, he is Sir Warren Buffett. What he says, that an idiot with a plan can beat a genius without a plan. So that is how important a planning is. You saw those pictures of projects. So unless you have a good plan or a good schedule, it is very difficult to be to complete a project successfully. So what is planning and scheduling? It is basically you want to decide today that how you are going to get those things done in future. So it is a present day strategy to achieve a desired goal in future. And this planning actually helps to achieve that with respect to highest quality, and then you consume less resources, which actually turns into reduction in cost. Now, in whether it is a planning and scheduling or whether it is a cost estimation, the WBS, that is work breakdown structure, is very important. Unless you uh, create a work breakdown structure. Now, what is work breakdown structure? Work breakdown structure is that you are actually disintegrating the total scope of your project into smaller packages, which are called as work packages, and that is how you can actually manage your project. So that is what is important. uh, so this is the process of how uh, the planning and how the schedule is prepared. That scope is broken down into smaller packages, and then you assign WBS code. Then based on that small packages, work packages, you estimate resources, how that work will be done. Then you assign, then you sequence those activity, what needs to be done first and what needs to be done later. You assign those predecessors and successor. You estimate the duration for each activity, and then you arrange that activities in shortest possible way, so that you can finish the work in at early. And then you must be, maybe many of you know this softwares like MS Project or Primavera, which are basically the based on the critical path method network diagrams. That is how you prepare those schedules. Now the schedules for the bigger plant, like the example which I gave you, that runs into maybe 18,000 or 20,000 line items. So it is very difficult to prepare such schedules, and unless you have a very good work breakdown structure and also the experience of that person who is preparing the schedule also counts. And that helps to actually manage the basically the monitoring and control of project becomes very easy. Also, the whatever, if something is not going as per the plan, you can introduce some corrective and preventive action. Now cost estimation, of course that WBS comes into picture, but what is cost estimation is basically you are identifying the cost associated with the resources which you have been which you will be requiring to get that work done. So estimating resources is very important, because that is based on that only you are getting those costs, and then you are getting that preparing that budget. Because cost you are finding out based on the resources, but when you are preparing budget, you need to assign that cost to particular cost accounts, which will help you to monitor it, because that is what is important. Now always cost estimation is approximation. It is always not possible to find the exact cost of the project, because it is mainly because you don't have enough information available when these estimates are prepared. Estimates are prepared at the very beginning of the project, when engineering is not even 10%. So that time definitely not all that information is not available. So the expertise of the cost estimator and maybe the data which he has from the past project is very important. There are various methods of cost estimating, which you will learn when you will attend those webinar for the cost estimation. So, and these are basically based on what kind of accuracy you get. So the bottom up estimate will give you a higher accuracy, whereas the analogous order of magnitude, which has got a less accuracy. Okay, this is few more things about cost estimate. That initially you will prepare a base estimate, which is called as cost baseline. But as and when you have a better picture of the project, more information about it, you need to adjust it, based on the change orders which are being issued. So over the project life cycle, the cost estimate actually keeps changing. And as I said, the person who is preparing the cost estimate is very important. Now what happens that since the initially, now how to adjust this cost? It cannot be like that initially you have a budget, a cost estimate based on the information available, and then you say that now all the information available and that is exceeding. So what is required to be done is you need to keep some contingency at the beginning. So contingency is for those items for which the information is not available at the beginning. So if you keep that contingency, whenever there is a change in the budget or the cost estimate, that can be adjusted against that contingency, and you can still maintain the overall budget of the project. So which is then there are two types of contingencies. It is either a project reserve or maybe a management reserve. Okay. Now the last part, the procurement and contracts. As I explained, procurement is all for all those product or services which we need to procure. So the make or buy decision means whether to buy or not, and one means whether to procure and what to procure. These are the two important things for deciding what kind of procurement is to be done. Now, when I say this decision means there are few things that you definitely know that you cannot be making those, like equipments and all you need to procure, but the machinery which is required for construction, like hire cranes, so you need to do that hire and purchase analysis for those equipments and see that whether hiring is cheaper or whether you want to procure that crane and then you assign that for the overall project. So then the evaluation criteria comes into picture. Whenever the contract is awarded, there are evaluation criteria set to decide whether that contractor is technically qualified or not. Some during tendering, what happens, they shortlist those 10 bidders who are technically qualified and then go for the commercial bid, so as to save some time and also energy, basically, rather than evaluating everybody on par. Now contracts are done like I earlier explained, that it could be a JV, like joint venture, it could be a design build, that design and build, or it could be a design build operate. Then both you maybe few of them knowing that build, own, operate and transfer. So then there are different type of contracts, like there are fixed contracts or fixed plus cost contracts, like that, or cost plus basis contracts. And then there could be a procurement phases also, like procurement phases in the sense that not everything you want to procure at one go. You want to procure maybe some percentage of the material at the beginning, and then based on the data available, you go for the final procurement. So contract is basically an agreement between two parties, which will have the scope of work, terms and conditions, contract agreement, the contract price, schedule of rates. So all these things are actually included in the contract. Okay, so now the last part of the things, most of this I already explained, that what are the career opportunities available. So I explained earlier that even if you are a field engineer, project engineer, it is better that you spend some time at site, because that actually will give you some visualization skills. How to design, how to resolve design conflicts, how to identify obstructions, how to deal with the labor, how to deal with your co-workers. So all these experience is very much required. If you work in the construction organogram rather than only design engineer, you have 5 to 6 times more opportunities available. And it is not that design engineer always sits in the office. In many projects, I have seen that design engineers have to come to the field as field design engineer. And then, of course, if you get this kind of trainings done, or maybe if you acquire some kind of specialization or certifications, then that will definitely help you to climb the ladder. And these are the areas, as I explained, that you could be estimator, you could be a planner or scheduler, you could be a project coordinator, contracts administrator, or maybe a QAQC engineer. So these are the areas you can work upon. Okay, so this is how I tried to give you a brief. It was very quick. Generally, I spent about 2.5 hours, but considering the time, I hope I have given you that information. So now, if you have any specific questions, we have 10 minutes, so we can do that. Is that okay, Shankar?
Yes. Anybody has got a question can, raise their hand and ask the question.
Hello.
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 Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
go ahead.
Vamsi here. Hello. My voice is audible, sir?
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Sir, actually the presentation was pretty good enough. I just had a small doubt which might be off the context as well. But as you explained us about the different roles of students getting into estimation, planning, project coordination, contracts, which you have already shown in
Hmm.
career gains. And apart from that, there
Uh-huh.
are different departments, right? So if the student is
Hmm.
going for planning department or else for the contracts department, I just wanted to know how the
Hmm.
ratio works actually. Like, as these departments are interconnected to one another, like everything is connected to one another, and accordingly they work according to that. And
Yeah.
this is my personal question related to, because I have been working in the industry as a site engineer for past 1.5 year, and I have completed
Hmm.
my MBA as well in construction
Hmm.
management. So presently I'm
Hmm.
going on with my placements from the college itself.
Hmm.
So what
Okay.
I wanted to get a clear picture was like whichever department I'll be going in, okay, so what are
Hmm.
their benefits in relation to the outcome as well as the salary, and at the same time how would be the career graph, like what would
Yeah.
be the growth in whichever department it is.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, good thing you raised this. Now the thing is that when we say, even if you say an organogram of a construction site or maybe a construction project, the field engineer number of field engineers will be very high. Like I said that if you talk about say design engineer, if you take a discipline engineer, there could be one or two mechanical engineers, one or two electrical engineers. Similarly, planner, scheduler, or the cost estimator, depending on upon the size of the project. If it is a very big project, then there could be a team of say 10 to 12 planners and schedulers, where there could be one manager, planning manager, and then you have some senior engineers, and then you have some planning engineers. So there could be a team of 8 or 10 people. But if you similarly, if you come for cost estimation and all, you won't have so many people, because generally generally the field organization, like the construction engineers, the requirement of construction engineers is very high. So the thing is that maybe initially you get into this because unless you have some experience, you cannot become a planner or scheduler or a cost estimator. You should have at least 4 to 5 years of experience. So spend that initial time in the field, understand the whole sequence, how the work goes, then interact with the cost estimators or planner and scheduler available, because planning and scheduling is not only the planning engineer does, it is a construction engineer's requirement also. Unless you understand that importance of planning, you cannot become a planning engineer. So that will be my advice. Of course the numbers are less if you talk about only planning engineer or cost engineer, but over the years, if you get that kind of knowledge, experience, and if you have some kind of certifications, then definitely those positions will be available. And salary wise, yes, definitely there will be a big delta for cost estimators and contracts engineers as compared to the field engineers.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Good
Go ahead, Samruti.
Yeah. Yeah.
evening, sir. Could you just elaborate on fast tracking?
Can you speak little louder, Samruddhi? I'm not able to hear.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Good evening. Can you just elaborate on fast tracking method, please? Fast tracking. Hello.
Yes, Samruti, I
Samruddhi,
think your
sorry.
voice is very
Yeah.
feeble. We will
Uh,
send one questionnaire or a survey after this session. You can
yeah.
write your question, and we can, give or so somebody from the section can answer your query directly. It's your voice is very
Yeah.
feeble.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Yes, sir. I wanted to know,
Yeah. Go ahead.
am I allowed?
Yeah. Yeah. Please go ahead, Sunny.
Sir, I wanted to know which is better, MBA in project management or PMP certification, or both?
See, to get a PMP certification or maybe a CCP, ASCA as any certification, you need to have some experience. So unless you meet that criteria of experience, you can't actually apply for that certification. So experience is something which is required. It cannot happen, so easily. Now this is a very tricky question, whether you want to do MBA or you want to do PMP, because MBA you can do immediately, even if you don't go, if you don't take a job right now, even after graduation you can immediately do MBA. But again, I would say, because I am also a faculty for some of the MBA colleges where this MBA in construction and project management is there, and I see the what happens with those guys. So the only thing what we will have at the end of MBA is that you will be rated little better than the graduate engineers. When you go for a job interview, or whenever you apply for a job, if there are, say, other graduate engineers are there, you will get some weightage because you are MBA. But I feel personally that unless you have some experience, maybe say 1 or 2 years at least experience, I would suggest not to do even the MBA. And for any certifications like PMP or CCI, it is better to have 4 to 5 years of experience. That is what it will help you to get those certifications.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we are about, it's about 88:57
Yeah.
of the session.
Correct.
So if you are, if you've gotten any questions, guys can write to, to us, to AAC India section. There will be a questionnaire which will be sent after the session, and you can, ask those questions and rate the session, and we will be, we will be glad to answer you. And Girish will be, you can get in touch with Girish also.
Yeah. Correct.
And as Girish mentioned, when we opened this, the webinar series, and as a India section president, Mr. Shiva, also mentioned, it is only an introduction. Today is only an, just an introduction only to the college students and very, very young professionals. And we also understand there are a few experienced professionals also available in the, as a part of this webinar now. And I would like to all of you attend all the webinars every day, and there you will have a very, very, very detailed and very, very informative sessions. And AAC has taken this initiative as a part of an students and young professional outreach, where we feel, the students coming out of the college, many times they think that the moment you get a degree and when you come out of the college, your education is stopped, and you need to only work and gain an experience. In fact, your education starts only when you enter the field, and the learning is a lifelong learning. And the whole purpose of this webinar is to orient those young guys. A series of webinars is to orient the young students and young professionals, and give the a taste of the the all aspects of the projects industry. It's, I mean, the coverage may not be only to do with only projects, rather, we'll go a level above and say that it will be an, we'll speak about an asset, right? It's about an asset life cycle management or an asset management, because project is a subset of an asset. So AAC specialty is, asset life cycle management. So tomorrow's session, what Girish will be presenting will be on the AACE's body of knowledge. That's the Bible of AACE, which is TCR, just a orientation towards the total cost management framework. And and tomorrow we will have a 10 to 15 minutes of a quick introduction also about AACE certifications and how it can help the young professionals building their career, right? With this, I would like to thank Girish and the President of India section, Shiva, and the Asutosh Nema for proposing this first the initiative. And thanks Asutosh. It's a very good initiative, and immediately everybody jumped and thought that we need, it's our duty and we need to have this sessions for the young professionals. And Nambi and the VP, the Treasurer of India section, and also a special thanks to Mrs. Bhagya Nair, who is the Secretary of India section, and who are all very actively working to make this thing, keep going. Thanks a lot, and we will be meeting all of you tomorrow at the same time with an introduction to the TCM framework. Thank you. Thanks all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And there are quite a few questions which are
Thank you,
in the
sir.
chat. We will be answering that. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.